Hello, museum friends. I'm Nat, and welcome to another Museum from Home talk. And I realize it's not Tuesday, it's Wednesday. Yes, this video is coming to you a day late. Yesterday, we decided to observe Blackout Tuesday and cancel all of our virtual events. The posting of the black tile was meant to show solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement and also let people know we are ready to facilitate a space to ask questions and talk about racism in America. As a museum, we have a responsibility to share stories that are relevant to our community and continuing history. This is a movement that reflects one of our core values to educate, and in the coming weeks and months and years, we hope to facilitate more discussions and opportunities for us to talk and understand and empathize, and I hope you'll join us. Today's topic, however, is on the lighter side of history: the fads and fashions and science surrounding sleep amongst couples during the early 1900s. And we're going to specifically dive into why, for a period of time in the late 19th century, the idea of a shared marital bed became seen as old-fashioned and unhealthy. So let's jump in. Sleeping habits today are unique to each couple. Whether and what we choose to share is up to each individual, usually only sharing amongst close friends, but we openly talk about our techniques to get more and better rest. Entire industries have been created off the premise of getting better sleep. Physicians and sleep experts have provided us evidence of what we need and should do in order to get that better rest, supplying recommendations, and the industry has often provided an answer to help us reach those sleep goals. Throughout history, we've chased after a good night's rest by having the right rituals, the right atmosphere, and so on. And sleeping arrangements have always varied by socioeconomic class. In the 19th and early 20th century, which is our focus today, many working class and middle class couples slept in the same bed, sometimes a family in one room. They had far less control over their sleeping situations because of monetary constraints or where they were living. Whereas the upper middle class and those with extravagant wealth had the space and fortune to accommodate what physicians and cultural norms or fashions recommended. The start of a good night's rest, though, all begins usually with the bed. And in the late 19th and early 20th century, separate beds for couples became quite fashionable. Now I'm going to pause for a minute and ask, what image do you conjure up when you hear married couples sleeping in separate beds? It's most likely this: those old black and white TV shows from the 1950s that had interesting codes of rules. For instance, ones that wouldn't allow Lucy from the show I Love Lucy to say that she was pregnant, rather she was in the family way. These separate beds feels dated and old-fashioned and maybe a bit prudish. It might even conjure up questions of whether the marriage is a healthy and good one. It may seem otherworldly to some of us. However, in the mid-1800s, twin beds and separate sleeping arrangements were all the rage. It was a fashion-forward move by couples who could afford it. And let's dive into why. In the mid-1800s, there was a new kind of thinking among medical doctors surrounding sleep and how to make it better for everyone. Doctors understood sleep was a huge part of a person's mental and physical health. However, their ideas about what could cause poor sleep sometimes miss the mark. Some of this early medical advice is kind of, okay, you're right, but for the wrong reasons. Like, there was this idea about how an older person shouldn't sleep with a younger person because the elder would drain the younger's vitality, whereas the actual cause could probably be explained by the older person being sick and coughing a lot or snoring a bunch, and the younger person isn't getting the full 8 hours. There were entire books written about sleep hygiene, like one written by William Woody Hall, which relays case studies with chapters such as Sleeping with the Old, The Deadly Nature of Bad Air, and Bodily Emanations. The second on this list, The Deadly Nature of Bad Air, mostly deals with the debunked miasma theory, which is bad or foul-smelling air spontaneously generates disease. It's an understandable thought. If a thing smells bad, it probably isn't good for us, but while a fart may be foul, it's not going to kill you. Proper ventilation became a huge buzzword at the time, making sure you could cycle out bad air for good air. These ideas of sleep hygiene filtered through Western society such that you start seeing people saying things like, if it is more or less familiar and common belief that where two persons sleep together in the same bed, the stronger will absorb the strength of the weaker, and whether this is due to absorption or not, there is no manner of doubt that the weary one's condition might be due to the presence of the other. And this was said by a furniture salesman in the Philadelphia Inquirer in 1902. However, surrounding these ideas of cleanliness and good sleep hygiene emerged a recommendation that couples should sleep in separate beds. Having a twin bed was cutting edge, the best sleep science had to offer. It was a sign of privilege and class. But this separation had different tiers of extravagance. If you had separate bedrooms for husband and wife, for instance, then you were really rolling in cash. If you had one bedroom, separate beds, and a dressing room like Alonzo and Margaret Roberson did, you were pretty well off. Just twin beds? Then you had some extra money to spend. Here's a picture, for instance, of Margaret and Alonzo's bedroom, which doesn't have its furnishings, but you can get a sense of the space and the amount of healthy ventilation, complete with entrances to the sitting room over here and dressing room for Margaret over there. Twin beds were something parts of the middle class and above could only afford, because 2 beds plus his and her sheets adds up. And if you're deciding between feeding your family and a status symbol, you're probably going to choose the former. Also, and I'm not sure how widespread the sentiment was, but apparently there were a few mentions of clergy butting heads with physicians over this medical recommendation. They worried that the physical separation of couples would break down the bonds of marriage. Again, I can't find widespread commentary on this, only a few here and there. Western culture, though, had shifted for a short time to accept the twin bed as a modern staple of the middle and upper class. The West, of course, would shift back to a predominantly shared marital bed-focused culture, though it must have been a great time for light sleepers, coupled with snoring partners. The history of the twin bed is quite remarkable because it shows us even the most ordinary objects can tell quite interesting stories. But that's all I have for today. Let us know what your sleep habits are in the comments down below. I usually have to listen to those auditory sleep meditation things in order to lull me to sleep. Anyway, if you'd like to support these videos, be sure to share them with your friends or head over to roberson.org/support and make a donation. If you want to read more about the history of twin beds in Western culture, I highly recommend reading A Cultural History of Twin Beds by Hilary Hinds. It's available to read for free online, and I'll be sure to leave a link to it down below. Otherwise, I hope you guys stay safe, and I hope to see you back at the museum soon. Otherwise, see you next week.